Next, we'll create an interior room with the same dimensions as the L-shaped house we previously created. Let's start by moving Frank off to the side, and I'm going to go to my top-down view so I can get a better perspective as I draw out my base. From the origin point straight up, we're going to go 25 feet, then across for 30 feet, down for 20 feet, over for 15 feet, up and infer, completing our drawing like such. Now we're going to use our select tool and we're going to select these two lines and use our offset to offset to the outside of the shape, not the inside. This offset will be 6 inches. Now you have to go back and you have to then connect the two edges here so that this fills in. These external lines will be double clicked carefully and made into a group. These will make up the interior walls of our design. Now that they are grouped, I'm going to double click them in edit mode and I'm going to push them up for a distance of 10 feet. It's important that you do not select the base here. The wall group should be separate from the base at this point. Now, since this room will ultimately be put inside of the exterior house, we have to make sure certain things line up. Let's do this by finding the center point of our room and giving ourselves a guideline to the exact center. Additional guidelines will be made from the corner over for a distance of 5 feet and over for a distance of 5 feet. From the bottom, we're going to come up for a total of 24 inches, and down from the top, 18 inches. What we are doing is laying out the inside of this wall with our guidelines so it's easier to create later. Now we have our guidelines. Carefully take your square tool and cover each of the squares all the way through. Now the middle section will be pulled out for a distance of 2 feet. Each of the side distances, which we actually still have to put a line across and across, will come out for a distance of 18 inches, double click, double click, double click, and the back wall will come out here for a distance of 2 inches. So again, we have now moved the top out 18, the bottom out 18 on both sides, and the back edge here 2. Let's look around and get rid of some lines if we can see any that we don't need, such as these lines across the top. And now if you remember correctly, on the opposite side of this wall was the chimney. And the chimney will line up directly with the fireplace that we are about to create. To begin the fireplace, let's take our square tool and create a rectangle that's 7 feet by 2 feet. We will now move this into position and center it from our midpoint directly into front of the fireplace. Let's push-pull this part of the fireplace for 1 foot. Our fireplace opening will be put here along this back wall, but first we need to create the simple step in front of it. To give it a little bit more detail, we're going to use our push-pull tool, but now as we push-pull, we're going to press the Control key, and you'll notice a little line comes up above it. Let's push-pull this distance for 3 inches. This will be the slate that you'll usually see in front of a fireplace. On either of the edges, we're going to click, making sure you uncheck the control key so that you do not have the plus sign next to the push-pull. And we're just going to move it out for a distance of 3 inches as well. I should be able to double click and bring the rest of those edges out. Now we have a small slate step, which we'll color later, on top of the fireplace brick. Now we'll put in the rectangle for our firebox where the fire will actually take place, and we'll label this at 5 feet by 3 feet. 5 feet, 3 feet. Now you'll notice mine moved too far down and I can't move it up. So I'm going to hit escape and draw it again. If this happens to you, escape, undo, and just draw it a little bit higher in the drawing, and then you'll be able to move it later on. 2 clicks, and center it in the middle of the fireplace, which is now taking shape. At this point in our drawing, we're ready to draw the mantle that goes around the fireplace. Now, I will walk you through a simple mantle. However, if you wish to make a custom mantle with more detail, you can go with Google image search for fireplace mantle, bring up the picture, and design yours similar to the one that you have in the picture. If you're going to keep the simple way that I'm going to do it, follow along by first selecting the 3 edges and our offset tool, and we'll offset out for a total of 7 inches. Next, we're going to want to pull this whole piece out slightly for a distance of 4 inches. This will give us an opportunity to slowly draw our own custom mantle. If we keep this one very simple, we can use 2 lines here so that we can get our midpoint. Once we take our midpoint, we can get rid of these simple lines. And now pull this edge out for the beginnings of our shelf. And I'll leave this at about 8 inches. I also want this to come out over the sides too. So again, I'm going to have to draw another little line here and pull this part out over the side for a distance of 5 inches. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side, making sure this is drawn, double click, and now, like we did with the step, let's give it a push-pull, holding our control tab of just about 2 inches, and extend this one out 2 inches as well from each of the edges. Two inches here, 2 inches there, and let's do a little bit more up front. We'll go for a distance of 4 inches. If you look around your drawing, there are little lines you can get rid of, so we'll just take those lines out there and there, and there, and there. And we could still add just a little bit more detail to make this fireplace look realistic. What I'll do is I'll take my tape measure tool and pull away from the wall right up into that edge so that I have a line from that corner coming straight down. What I want to do is I want to put a arc here moving across. So in order to get that arc correct, I'm going to take my arc tool, click once, click twice, and as you pull it out, let's pull it out for a distance of about 5 inches and see how that looks. Okay, it's nice and round. We can then take it and pull it up to the bottom and do the same thing over here, giving us a nice column look. 1, 2 for a distance of 5, and pull back up. Here we have a very simple fireplace design, which can be improved upon as you move through the drawing. The last thing I want to do is I just want to round these edges off here so they're not so sharp. To do so, I'm going to need some guidelines. So I'll give myself a guideline of 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches here. Let's take our arc tool again and move it around till we get our tangent, which will turn purple when you get there. Click it and drag down. Again, we'll do the same thing over here. We already have one line, so we don't need another. Or two lines, we only need one. And this will come over for 1.5 inches. Right, that gives us some nice round edges and a very simple mantle. The mantle can be much more complicated, but for now we'll leave it just as is. All we have to do is take the firebox and push it back just a little bit for a distance of 6 inches. And let's go ahead and delete our guidelines and save our work here. With our guidelines deleted, we'll now add some other simple features to the room before we start to color it and add our actual fireplace. We're going to add some shelves to either side here, which are exactly the same size, and so we're going to make them in a very simple way using our components. First, let's take our tape measure tool and move our guideline out to this edge. We want our shelves to stop so they don't actually come any further over than these lines here. We'll do the same thing over here so that we have a very simple guide. Now I'm going to draw the profile for my first shelf, and I'm going to make it approximately this far down. You don't have to put an exact position, but enough so that it looks like a normal distance for a particular shelf. I'm going to move back to my edge here, and I'm at 1/4 inch, and then depending how far, 1 foot 4 inches back, and then depending how thick you want it. So I'm going to make it, at this point it's 1.4 inch, it's 1 foot 4 inches by 1 7/8 of an inch. So I'm going to make this shelf 1 foot 4 inches by, and then this number will determine the thickness of it. And since it's going to be a glass shelf, let's make it 1 inch so that it's not too wide. Nope, that's clearly not what we want. So we'll have to go back and make it 1 foot 4 inches by 1 inch. Still not it. Nope, I'm putting the comma in the wrong place. We'll do 1 foot 4 inches by 1 inch. And that'll give us a nice, decent size for our shelf. Now, since these shelves, there's going to be 3 of them, 3 over here, are all going to be the same, you should know at this point that we're going to make a component out of them. So let's click 3 times, make it a component, and I'll just name this component shelf. Double clicking on it, you can see that it is in fact a component, and now we're going to copy it. Remember, when you copy components, you do not want to be in edit mode. Let's get our move tool, zoom in, get nice and tight so you can see exactly where you're going. We'll press our shift key, and here's a little trick to make sure our shelves are completely even. I'm going to bring mine down by pressing the copy move. I'm going to get it to right about here, and then I'm going to click, and before I touch any other button, I'm going to press the backslash key in the bottom right hand of your keyboard by the shift button. I'm now going to enter 4, which will give me 3 more evenly spaced lines. Now in this case, that's probably too many for this area, so let's do it again. I'll Control Z that and come down, and let's backslash 2 more for a total of 3. That looks a little bit more appropriate for the space we have. Now we want to copy those same shelves over here. Very easy to do. Carefully zoom in, holding your shift button, select all 3 shelves. Now with your move tool, I'm going to grab the top corner, press Control to copy it, and I'm going to move them across. Now you already have a place to snap from the guideline you've already created. That's how you know that they'll come to the very edge. And now move down until you feel it snap to the green axis, which means you're perfectly straight and across. Now, let's take one of those components, double click it, use our push-pull tool, and pull the shelf out to the very edge. Now, since we said these are glass shelves, while the component is still open, I'll get my translucent tool. I'll make sure I triple click the shelf to give it a translucent or glass look. Let's step back and save your work. The next feature we're going to use is to import an image or a picture from the internet to use as the actual fire. The picture of the fire will be set into the fireplace as you see it, and we will download it from Google Images. To do so, you will need to open up your browser and go directly to Google Images. Now, there are tons of images to get. Let's narrow our search down by Googling fireplace fire. As you can see, there are a ton of images that come up. But before we pick any image, we must consider a couple things. First and foremost is the size of the drawing, the size of the picture. The larger the resolution size of the picture, the more clarity. However, too big of a file is no good for SketchUp and will not import it. So let's open up our search tools, and under More Tool, let's show sizes. You can see now you get a bunch of different sizes all over the place, ranging from 3000, which is a huge resolution, all the way down to small, about 300 by 225. What we're going to use is another filter of the size filter, and we're going to search it by large size. Okay, now you still have very, very high numbers, but you do have ones around 1024, which is what we're going to be looking for. Let's see if we can go larger than, or exactly. Let's go larger than 1024. Okay, so you still have about the same amount. So now the next thing we must consider is the ratio, the aspect ratio of where it's actually going. The aspect ratio is essentially the distance from left to the top left corner to the bottom right hand corner. If we go back and we look at the place where the fireplace is actually going to be fitting, you'll notice that the distance is wider than it is tall. While we can scale down the picture to fit, what we want to do is get an image that is close to that aspect ratio as possible. So as I'm looking through at the different images, you see a couple that may or may not fit depending on what you're looking for. So as I go through, these are pretty cool. That's a pretty large file size. That may or may not fit. This one's pretty large too. Let's pick this one here. This one seems to work pretty well, depending on the look you want. You could use something like this where you have the bricks in the background, but I'm going to select this one. So I'm going to click on it. And when I click on it, I'm going to go over here and I want to view the image. This is the image file itself. So I'm going to right click and on the same image as. It's going to ask you where you want to save it. What I would do is I just name it fireplace, fire. And in the top left corner, I would click on desktop. This is the easiest place to find it. However, if you want to put it into your Google Drive or another place where you know where your pictures are, that's fine as well. I'm going to hit save. Once the file is downloaded, I'm going to go back into SketchUp, where I will zoom in nice and tight, and I will need to import the picture that I've just downloaded. To do so, you're going to go to File, Import, and you're going to import mine directly from my desktop. Now, you have to be careful. If you do not see the image that you've just downloaded in the window, come down here where it says Types of File, and you may have a file type selected that is not on the desktop, such as a SketchUp file. Therefore, you're not going to see the image. In order to see all the images on your desktop, let's go to all supported image, and you'll see the JPEGs come up. Click OK, and you'll notice that your picture comes in. Now, this picture does not fit exactly. However, we can very easily get it into place by clicking it in the right spot and then scaling it accordingly. Be careful not to click anywhere as you bring in, because if you accidentally click in one spot, it's going to get stuck and it's difficult to move after you've already put it in one position. Okay? Instead, what we want to do is, as we bring the file in, I'll delete mine and bring it again. Your handle is in the bottom left corner. I'm going to zoom in nice and tight and click the bottom edge. Once I've clicked the bottom edge, the picture starts to scale proportionally. Now, depending on where your mouse is where it's going to snap to. So you want to move the mouse to the side that's going to snap to the edge first. So when I click here, I snap to the edge and click in place. Now it still needs to be a little bit bigger. This is where we can use our scale tool. Be careful not to deselect the drawing. If you click off of it, you're not going to be able to move it again. You'll have to delete it and re-import it. Get your scale tool, and just like the other ones, grab your handle, slide it over, and drop it into position. Once you've done so, your fireplace will be in the drawing and saved with the file itself, so you no longer will need to import it for the rest of the time. With the image of the fireplace successfully installed, we're going to want to zoom in on the fireplace and make the majority of the fireplace a group. When most images are used, you want to group the image with whatever structure they're on so that it does not interfere with other features in SketchUp. To do so, I'm going to zoom in on the fireplace nice and tight, and I'm actually going to change my camera from perspective to parallel projection. When I do that, the fireplace should look directly at me as I flip through my different drawings, and you can see I'm looking directly at it. Now, very carefully, I'm going to grab just the lines directly around the fireplace, right click, and make it a group. This will allow me to protect the fireplace going forward. Now you'll see that my lines on my walls are slightly distorted. That's due to the view. We'll go back to our perspective view, and the drawing will be back to normal. Right now you should have two groups, your outer wall grouping and your fireplace group. Now that you have the basics of the room built, you can begin to customize the room as you see here. The different components and groups that I have within the room are all made the same way as objects you've made before. What I've done is to help me align things is I have used guidelines from the top down to give me a nice edge even with the top here all the way across. I created each one of these picture frames, which is its own group, and lined up equally and then copied down. It's important that if you do use an image, like we said before, that each picture frame or mirror that you use a picture in is grouped just by itself, and there should be no other lines in it, so that if I were to hide it, just that group goes away. All the additional features I've added are groups, including the books, as well as the television that has an image overlaid on the top of it. If you do not carefully group each piece together with the images, they will not show through when we do the last grouping that we need to do. Now, in order to prep the rest of this and send it into the file, we need to do a couple things. You've noticed I left all the walls and everything uncolored, as it is easier to see your guidelines and drawing lines when you're doing it. We'll save the coloring for the very end before we export it into our other file. The first thing we must do is to push-pull the floor up a little bit. When you triple-click the floor, only the floor and the wall should highlight, not the fireplace, as that's a group, or the walls, which are a group as well. Let's double-click the floor and use our push-pull tool up to just 0.5 inches. We want to make it nice and small so it's not noticeable, but it's important that we do push-pull it. I'm then going to use my materials window to give it a wood texture. Next, I'm going to go up and I'm going to delete my guidelines if you used any, so my drawing is nice and clean. The last few things that we're going to need to color is the fireplace. We're not going to worry about coloring this wall, as you'll see why in a moment. Let me go through and color my fireplace how I see fit. Now that I've colored this one particular wall, including the group, as well as the chimney and surrounding areas, I'm ready to begin the export into our other file. The first thing we have to do in order to export this properly is to right-click on the wall grouping and hide it. With the wall grouping hidden, we are now going to group everything else you see here together in one group. Now we have a lot of components that are not highlighting when I'm double clicking, so I can either hold shift and select each individual component, or just simply stand back and get a nice big box to select everything and make it a group. You must first now open up in a separate file without closing the interior house, the exterior L-shaped house, which should look like this. We will be adding our room to the L-shaped house, so once you have it open, we need to hide the roof, or if you did your layers, we're going to go up to our roof layer and press invisible. Now we are going to want to create another layer called interior, and since we want to bring the other part of our drawing into the interior layer, we have to remember to click the little circle, making it the active layer. Now let's go back to our interior with the group selected, not in edit mode, just selected. We're going to go to edit and copy. Let's then go into our drawing of the exterior, make sure we're on the active layer, and edit and paste it in place. If done correctly, it should drop perfectly into position, and you should not see any type of evidence of the exterior walls as we deleted them. Notice the fireplace lines up perfectly with the back, and all the pictures that we have created are visible on the wall. If we hide the exterior layers or the exterior walls, you'll notice that our pictures are still there. Let's go ahead and bring the roof back, and you now have successfully incorporated the interior room into the exterior room.